So today we're going to be looking at some Rainbow Six Siege, and I hope you guys all had a good Christmas holiday. It's nice to have just a few days in the year where you know you need to do absolutely nothing. You can just have a few good days of decent food, presents and all that kind of stuff, and spending time with your family. So I hope you guys all enjoyed your Christmas, and I hope you guys got what you wanted. And hopefully if you got Rainbow Six Siege today, this kind of video will be something you'll be interested in. Now, I've been playing Rainbow Six Siege for a while now, and I've really come to terms with the competitive environment that the game offers, and just in general how things work when you're playing Rainbow Six Siege. So today I thought we'd go through everything and talk about the best top tips you guys can use in order to get the most out of your experience when you jump into Rainbow Six Siege. And we're going to start from everything from choosing your operator to just general in-game play. And we're not going to be any specifics to any operators in particular, because I'm going to be doing an entire operator series where I go through each one of them one by one, and you guys will be able to see those videos soon. So we're just talking about generalized gameplay and things that can help you improve. So first up is operator selection, and really this comes down to three categories. The first one is, what is my preferred weapon and loadout in terms of effectiveness, and just choosing a weapon that is right for you and the guns that you're used to and the equipment that you think you can do the best with. And for me, that's Sledge and Mute in terms of attacking and defending, because I prefer the weapons that they have and the equipment that they have to offer. Secondly is, what are the demands of the game mode? Now this is my biggest hate of new players over the festive season, and it's the new ones who run operators like Fuse or perhaps somebody with a lot of grenades in a hostage situation. And you really need to be selective with your lethal and non-lethal loadouts dependent on the objective that you are facing. The amount of hostages that have been killed over the last few days has been ridiculous, and I really hope that you guys, when you jump into hostage mode, you think, okay, well maybe this is a good time to run Blitz with a shield or some flashbangs or Twitch, instead of running someone like Fuse who has a cluster charge which has no tacticality in terms of how to take out the enemy and get the objective. And the third one finally is, what do my teammates need from me? Now for example, if I see on my team when I'm defending that lots of my players have chosen aggressive operators defensively such as Pulse and Capcan, I will intentionally choose a more defensive setup like Castle or Jaeger just to even things out a bit. And the same applies to the attackers as well. It's just finding a decent balance and equilibrium. The last thing you need is too many aggressive players or too many defensive players. You want to find a nice balance between the two, and that way you can get a decent rhythm going between your teammates. And finally, when looking at operator selections and loadouts and things like that, you have the actual weapon attachments themselves, and this is something that you guys need to be really careful with. And it can be pretty encouraging just to slap on any old attachment, but for me you need to keep a few things in mind. Now for sights, be wary as to what can take up more of your screen. I personally find the holographic sight very invasive on some of my weapons, and it reduces my overall awareness because I can't see everything that's going on my screen. But on the flip side of that, I find smaller sights like the triangular ones less accurate. So you guys really need to play around with this and find some kind of balance that you're comfortable with working with. And personally for me, it's either a holographic or red dot sight. I'm finding the triangular one a bit too inaccurate for me, and I'm kind of willing to set back the suffering of slight less accuracy with the holographic. But again, this is your formula, mess around with it a bit and you'll find what you like. Now for suppressors and grips, you need to be aware of damage drops specifically for suppressors, and aware of spread increases specifically for the grip. A suppressor can drop the damage of a weapon quite significantly in some circumstances, and I feel as though the lower damage model weapons really cannot use them if they want to be effective, because you also have to bear in mind enemies on the opposite team might be running armor plates as well, which will even more dampen the damage that you impact on them, so be aware of that. And with the grips, I've actually found it quite interesting. So for example, on the operator Twitch, their 417 semi-automatic rifle actually has a huge spread increase when you add a grip to it. So look into the corner of your screen when you apply your attachments to be aware of what statistics you will affect. Now, the spread for me is something you're going to want to keep as compact and tight as physically possible, especially when you have to bear in mind that you're going to be aiming for the head and chest specifically, because that's the high damage areas you're looking for. So having a very wide spread is something you're going to want to avoid as much as you physically can. So just be wary of those statistics in the bottom right corner when applying attachments in general. Now for the in-game stuff, and I want to give you guys a few general tips when it comes to attacking, defending, and just general gameplay when it comes to Rainbow Six Siege. So first up for defending, when you spawn in, you need to immediately make use of all equipment that you have. Lay down your armor or your jamming devices, fortify ceilings and wall entrances, and barricade windows and doors. The faster you get this done, the more prepared you'll be. Another important thing to do is to spread out in and around the objective, because you don't want to become a statistic of a good grenade or fuse charge, and I find it all too often that teammates get bundled into one room together and lots of them can get taken out instantly by a half-decent explosive. Another great tip is to create a cross-section in your rooms by having different players in different corners. If you can cover all of the angles and sight lines within your room and cover all the entry points by having people in different corners, it is plausible that you can practically become some kind of impenetrable room and make it impossible for the enemy team to get in, especially if you have very effective shooters on your team. Now, with that, it's very important that you do watch entry points and specifically windows for stray shots and movement. I find it all too often that the enemy team will sometimes put a bullet through a door or a window, and you can roughly work out the trajectory of where it's come from the lighting effects that are left past it. And you can even hear enemies moving on the outside of windows and doors when they're repelling and such. So be very much aware of those entry points and listen out for them. Don't make a lot of movement yourself. Stay very quiet and just let the enemy team do all of the information working out for you, and you'll be able to have a rough approximation of where they're going to be. Now, another important one is to use the cameras immediately to highlight points of entry and the general spawn that they have used. Now, if you have any players defending aggressively, i.e. they're not in the room and they're moving around on other floors to try and take out enemies early, they can intercept and cripple enemy numbers early on. It's actually incredibly effective to have somebody who runs out there and takes them out first. And I've seen it before where the objective is in a room, you break down a window and you start shooting at these people who have just spawned in. And you can easily land a good 3 or 4 kills because it's just so unexpected, and that's definitely something you're going to want to keep an eye out for. And my final top tip for defenders is to dig in and take your time. You have to remember that the attackers have to come to you and not the other way around. You can drain the time that they have to win rounds, and in the last minute or so, you can even force them to rush a room and make mistakes. If you're the kind of defensive team that pushes everybody outside the room and goes for them offensively, it's likely that the attackers will have the edge. But if you dig in and take your time, it's likely you will force the advantage. Now for a few quick tips on what you shouldn't do as a defender, and the first one is leave the objective room unprotected, and you can really see how stupid some teams are sometimes, especially on hostage mode, when they've left the room empty, somebody's jumped in, grabbed the hostage and left the room, and that's it, game over. You always need, I'd say, 2 people in that room to have at least a decent level of security. The second one is moving constantly, because you will make noise that the enemies can hear and likely will be able to work out your position. Yesterday, when I was playing Rainbow Six Siege, I actually managed to work out that there was an enemy directly above me because he was shuffling around on the floor whilst laying down, and I threw a nitro cell literally through a gap in the floor and killed him. And it's just the little mistakes like that that can make such a huge difference on the game that you are playing. The other one is not to spend ages trying to shoot out camera drones, or in the process of that, shoot a teammate or hostage. The amount of stupid times I've seen players running around fully autoing their weapons on the floor in order to take out these things. You need to understand that once these drones are in the room and they've found the objective, that's it. They know where you are. It's likely the enemy team knows where the objective is and it's been spotted, so there's no point trying to take these things out. When the action round has ended and the cameras are static and on the floor, then shoot them out. Don't spend your time chasing around camera drones, which are otherwise distracting you from reinforcing the walls and windows that the enemy team are going to use as points of entry. Now for the attackers, and we're just going to look at a few quick top tips. Now my first one is to get camera drones into good spots and not waste them. Get them on bookshelves in corners and places that are unsuspecting, because then you have intel on the room of the objective constantly and you can get some swift kills by knowing where the enemy are exactly. Use your second camera drone to clear and check entry points or points of attack. The amount of possibilities you guys have when you first enter the enemy building is pretty large, but it's also very likely that the enemy team could be playing offensively when they're defending. So get a camera drone, run it through the hallways, run it through the windows, and you'll know if it's safe to enter that way and work your way through the building. The next one is to use lethal and non-lethal operators where necessary. We've already discussed how many times hostages have been killed, so be very much aware of that. Next up, we have to attack the rooms from different entry points, because bunching up is just an awful idea. If an attacking team can go at a room from about 4 different locations and they do that cohesively, it's very unlikely that the defending team will have the opportunity to stop every single one of them. Next is to shoot out building cameras as fast as you can. That will mask your positions, that will mask where you're entering from, and in general it definitely improves the situation that you're in. And finally is to check your corners and move through the building slowly, because I find it very too often that the attacking team can rush their way down hallways and staircases and get taken out quite easily by the enemy team when all they have to do is take their time and whisper their way through the building. And that's just about it with Siege. I gotta say, lots of the tips here have come down to pacing and taking your time. Just be time aware, realize that there are 5 minutes on the clock, and realize that you can take as much time as you need, or force the clock against the enemy team that you are facing, and just keep that in mind throughout the entire time that you play this game. Now finally, just a few general tips that I want to fire your way. First and foremost, you have a compass in the corner which tells you the name of the room you are in and the floor that you are on, which you can communicate to your teammates. Leaning around corners exposes less of your body, so use it more. Crouching significantly reduces footsteps and noise made by footsteps in particular. Zip wires make a lot of noise on the side of buildings, so be aware of that when attacking and defending. And finally, the most crucial one is always aim for the head and tap fire where necessary, because that is the most lethal way to kill the enemy team. So guys, that's it for my quick tips. Now, there's lots of things that we can discuss, and that's going to come up in operator videos where I'm going to be individually analyzing each operator in the game, so look out for those. As always, thank you for watching, make sure you hit that like button, and I'll see you again soon in another video.